Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., cutting through the silence of our bedroom like a blade. I reached for it instinctively, squinting at the screen through sleep-heavy eyes. The message wasn't for me. It was from Lexi's phone, sitting on her nightstand. She wasn't beside me. "Busy now. I'll call after." I stared at those 5 words, my mind slowly processing what I was seeing. My wife of 8 years, sending texts at 3 in the morning to someone who wasn't her husband. The sender's name glowed on the screen, Ethan Brand. I knew that name. Venture capitalist, tech disruptor, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 sneakers and called himself an entrepreneur. Lexi had mentioned him at dinner parties, always with that particular gleam in her eye she got when discussing interesting people. "Don't bother," I typed back, using her phone. "Stay with him. My line is closed to you." "Send. My line is closed to you. Send." I set the phone back on the nightstand and waited. Derek Malone, logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company, husband to a rising PR executive, veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan where I learned patience was a weapon. I'd gotten very good at waiting. The response came faster than expected. Her phone lit up again. "Derek, what are you doing with my phone?" Then another. "We need to talk. We need to talk." And another. "I'm coming home." I turned the phone face down and walked to the kitchen. Our apartment, her apartment really, paid for mostly by her salary, felt different in the pre-dawn darkness. The gleaming surfaces and carefully arranged furniture looked cold, sterile, like a showroom nobody actually lived in. I made coffee and sat at the granite island, listening to the city wake up 30 floors below. Boston stretched out before me through floor-to-ceiling windows, all glass and steel and ambition. Lexi loved this view. She said it reminded her she was going places. Apparently, she'd been going to Ethan Brand's place. The elevator dinged at 4:23 a.m. I heard her heels clicking across the marble entryway, quick and nervous. She'd probably been rehearsing her explanation during the ride up. "Derek?" Her voice carried that particular tone she used with difficult clients. Smooth, controlled, designed to manage a situation. "We need to discuss this like adults." "What haze?" I didn't answer. "Let her come to me." She appeared in the kitchen doorway, still wearing the black dress from whatever client dinner she'd claimed to be attending. Her makeup was smudged, her usually perfect hair disheveled. She looked exactly like what she was. "You went through my phone," she said, crossing her arms. "Going on a fence. Classic Lexi. Your phone was buzzing. I thought it might be important." I took another sip of coffee, keeping my voice level. "Turns out it was. It's not what you think." "Really? Because I think you're sleeping with Ethan Brand. Am I wrong?" The question hung between us like a challenge. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For someone whose job was managing crises, she seemed remarkably unprepared for this one. "Derek, listen. No." I stood up, setting my mug down carefully. "I'm done listening. I've been listening for months while you worked late, traveled for conferences, had emergency client meetings. I listened when you started going to the gym at 6 a.m. instead of 7. I listened when you changed your perfume, your underwear, your whole routine. I'm a logistics guy, Lexi. I notice patterns." Her face went pale beneath the makeup. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. The expectations. Save the speech for your clients. I told Ethan my line is closed to you. That goes double now that I'm saying it to your face." She stepped forward, reaching for me. "Derek, please. We can work through this. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. Multiple choices over multiple months. I never meant for you to find out this way. You never meant for me to find out at all." The truth of it settled between us. She'd been planning to keep playing both sides, managing her husband and her lover like competing accounts. The only thing she regretted was getting caught. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to leave. And this is my apartment too. Then I'll leave. Either way, I'm done pretending we're something we're not." I walked past her toward the bedroom, but she grabbed my arm. "Derek, wait. Let's not do anything rash. We can figure this out." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually loved you, past tense. But you killed that tonight with 5 words in a text message." She let go like I'd burned her. "I'll pack a bag," I said. "You can have your apartment and your boyfriend and whatever story you want to tell people. Just remember, I know the truth, and I'm very good at remembering details. I left her standing in the kitchen, staring at the city lights she loved so much. By the time I finished packing, she'd retreated to her home office, probably already crafting the narrative. Lexi was nothing if not good at her job. But then again, so was I. I spent the next 3 days at a hotel near my office, using the time to think and plan. In logistics, you learn that every system has pressure points, places where a small disruption can cascade into something much larger. Marriages, I was discovering, worked the same way. Lexi had texted me 17 times since I left. The messages followed a predictable pattern: anger, bargaining, guilt, more anger. I read them all but didn't respond. Silence was its own kind of message. On Thursday, I made my first move. Simone Walsh had been Lexi's best friend since college. Social media consultant, professional gossip, the kind of person who knew everyone's business and loved sharing it. She and Lexi had lunch every Tuesday at the same upscale bistro downtown. I knew because I'd been paying attention. I arrived at Cafe Meridian 20 minutes before their usual reservation time and took a table with a clear view of the entrance. When Simone walked in, blonde, overdressed, checking her phone, I was ready. Simone. I stood up as she passed my table. She stopped, startled. Derek? What are you doing here? Waiting for you, actually. Mind if we talk? Her eyes darted toward the hostess station, probably looking for Lexi. I'm meeting someone. You're meeting my wife, who's running late because she's probably trying to figure out how to spin her affair with Ethan Brand. I gestured to the empty chair across from me. 5 minutes, that's all I need. Moan's face went through several expressions before settling on cautious curiosity. She sat down. I don't know what Lexi told you, I began. But I know what she told me. Nothing, for months. Derek, I really don't think I should. You knew. It wasn't a question. You've been covering for her, haven't you? Providing alibis, taking her calls when she needed an excuse. Moan's silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, keeping my voice conversational. You're going to tell Lexi that maintaining her secret isn't worth damaging your own reputation. Because I have screenshots of some very interesting social media posts you made about your married boss, Richard. The ones where you called him daddy and used those little fire emojis. Her face went white. You wouldn't. I'm a logistics coordinator, Simone. I solve problems by finding the most efficient path from point A to point B. Right now, you're a problem. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I don't even know you anymore. You never knew me. None of Lexi's friends did. I was just the boring husband who showed up to parties and didn't say much. But boring doesn't mean stupid. Lexi appeared at our table before Simone could respond, her face tight with confusion and anger. What's going on here? She looked between us like she'd walked into an ambush, which I supposed she had. Derek was just leaving, Simone said quickly, standing up. Actually, I was just finishing. I stood as well, straightening my jacket. Ladies, enjoy your lunch. I'm sure you have a lot to discuss. I left them standing there and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. Through the window, I could see them sitting down, Lexi leaning forward intensely while Simone gestured with her hands. The conversation looked heated. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Who is this, and what do you want? Ethan Brand. Lexi must have given him my contact information. I typed back. The husband. And what I want is very simple. Stay away from my wife. The response came immediately. Or what? I smiled and put the phone away. Let him wonder. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar in Southie where my old army buddy Cal worked as a bartender. The place smelled like cigarettes and regret. Exactly the kind of establishment Lexi would never be caught in. You look like hell, Cal said, sliding a beer across the scarred wooden bar. Feel worse. I took a long drink. Remember what you used to... say about intelligence gathering? Know your enemy better than they know themselves. Cal studied my face. We talking about enemies now. I told him everything. The affair, the lies, the elaborate deception that had been my marriage for the past several months. Cal listened without interruption. occasionally nodding or making small sounds of disgust. "So what's the play?" he asked when I finished. "I want them to understand what they've lost. Both of them. Revenge? Justice. There's a difference." Cal refilled my beer. "What do you need?" "Information. Background. The kind of details that help you understand who you're really dealing with." I still got contacts from the old days. Private investigators, courthouse clerks, people who know how to find things. He paused. "This could get messy." "It's already messy. I'm just changing who gets dirty." We spent the next hour planning. Cal knew people who knew people, the kind of network you build over 20 years in law enforcement and the military. By the time I left Murphy's, I had 3 phone numbers and a clearer picture of what I was up against. Ethan Brand wasn't just a venture capitalist. He was a serial cheater with a pattern of targeting married women in professional settings. He had a wife of his own, a fact that Lexi apparently didn't know. The irony was delicious. The information Cal's contacts provided painted an interesting picture of Ethan Brand. Married for 6 years to a corporate lawyer named Patricia. 2 affairs that his wife knew about. Probably more that she didn't. A business built on borrowed money and inflated promises. The kind of man who looked successful from the outside, while everything underneath was held together with lies and leverage. Perfect. I spent Saturday morning in my hotel room, organizing what I'd learned into a comprehensive file: photos, financial records, social media screenshots, testimony from previous affairs. In the Army, we called it building a target package. In civilian life, it was just good preparation. My phone rang at noon. Lexi's name appeared on the screen. "We need to meet," she said without preamble. "This has gone far enough." "Has it? I'm just getting started." "Derek, please. Can we at least try to handle this like civilized people?" Civilized people don't cheat on their spouses for 6 months and then demand civility when they get caught. A long pause. "How did you know it was 6 months?" "I told you. I notice patterns. The gym membership you never use but pay for anyway. The new credit card statements that stop coming to the house. The way you started putting your phone face down during dinner." I let that sink in. Should I continue? "Meet me at Starbucks on Newberry Street." 1 hour. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm done meeting you places and pretending we can work this out. You made your choice. Live with it. I hung up and immediately called the front desk to extend my hotel stay another week. 20 minutes later, someone knocked on my door. I checked the peephole and saw a young guy in a cheap suit, probably mid-20s, looking nervous. "Derek Malone?" he asked when I opened the door. "Depends who's asking. My name's Rico Martinez. I work for Ethan Brand. He sent me to deliver a message." I almost laughed. Ethan was sending his assistant to intimidate me. Let me guess. Back off, or else. Rico shifted uncomfortably. "He wants to meet. Says you two should talk man to man. Tell your boss that real men don't send boys to deliver their messages. If he wants to talk, he can call me himself." He tried. "You didn't answer." That should tell him something. Rico handed me a business card. "He'll be at his office tonight until 9. 23rd floor, Prudential Tower." I took the card but didn't look at it. "You know what your boss does for fun, Rico?" "Sir?" "He breaks up marriages, takes other men's wives and turns them into liars." "You comfortable working for someone like that?" The kid's face reddened. "I just deliver messages. We all make choices about who we work for. Remember that." I closed the door and left him standing in the hallway. That evening, I drove to the Prudential Tower, but didn't go up to Ethan's office. Instead, I waited in the parking garage with a camera and a lot of patience. At 8:47 p.m., a familiar figure emerged from the elevator bank. "Lexi." She looked around nervously before walking to a silver BMW parked in a reserved space. Ethan appeared a moment later, putting his arm around her waist as they walked. They looked comfortable together, like a real couple. I took pictures. They drove to a restaurant in Back Bay, one of those places with valet parking and a wine list longer than most novels. I followed at a distance, parking across the street where I could watch them through the windows. They were holding hands across the table, sharing dessert, acting like lovesick teenagers. No guilt, no shame, no apparent concern for the lives they were destroying. Just 2 selfish people enjoying their stolen romance. I took more pictures. When they left the restaurant, they went to Ethan's condo in the Seaport district. I knew the address from Cal's research. Luxury building, doorman, the kind of place that screamed new money and bad taste. I didn't follow them inside. I didn't need to. The pictures I had were enough to tell the story. Instead, I drove to Patricia Brand's house in Brookline. The address had been in Ethan's file, along with photos and background information. Corporate lawyer, partner at a white shoe firm, the kind of woman who worked 80-hour weeks and probably had no idea what her husband did with his free time. Her house was a classic colonial, well-maintained but not showy. Lights were on in what looked like a home office. I could see her silhouette through the window, hunched over a computer. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching her work while her husband entertained his mistress across town. She deserved to know the truth, but timing was everything. Revealing Ethan's affair too early would spoil the larger plan taking shape in my mind. Patience. In the Army, we learned that the best operations unfolded slowly, each piece fitting into place at exactly the right moment. I drove back to
He just gave me a massage, that's it!
A massage? With I Miss Your Body after?
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
my hotel and spent the rest of the night organizing my evidence into a timeline. Photos, credit card receipts, hotel reservations, restaurant charges. The story of an affair told through data points and documentation. Lexi thought she was managing the situation, controlling the narrative like one of her PR campaigns. But she'd made a critical error in judgment. She'd forgotten that I was very good at my job too. Monday morning brought a development I hadn't anticipated. My boss, Janet Morrison, called me into her office with a concerned expression and a manila folder on her desk. "Derek, I need to ask you about some allegations that have been brought to my attention." I sat down, already knowing what was coming. Lexi was escalating. "What kind of allegations?" Janet opened the folder. "Your wife contacted HR over the weekend. She claims you've been exhibiting erratic behavior, making threats, possibly drinking on the job. And what evidence did she provide for these claims? She says you've been harassing her friends, following her, sending threatening messages." Janet looked uncomfortable. "She's concerned about your mental state." I leaned back in my chair, genuinely impressed. Lexi was trying to destroy my credibility preemptively, painting me as an unstable husband whose accusations couldn't be trusted. "Janet, how long have I worked here?" 8 years. "Have I ever been late, missed a deadline, or caused any problems?" "No, but have you ever seen me drink alcohol at work or exhibit any behavior that concerned you?" "Derek, I'm not questioning your work performance, but marital problems can affect people in unexpected ways." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder of my own. "Before we continue, I think you should see something." I handed her printouts of Lexi's credit card statements, highlighting charges at hotels, restaurants, and boutiques during times when she'd claimed to be working late or traveling for business. "These are from our joint account," I explained. Notice the pattern of charges at the Mandarin Oriental during lunch hours, always on days when she told me she was in client meetings. Janet studied the papers, her expression growing more serious. "I also have photographs of her with Ethan Brand, taken last night at a restaurant and his apartment building. Time-stamped, dated, completely verifiable." I placed the photos on her desk. "My wife is having an affair, Janet. She's trying to discredit me because she knows I have evidence of her infidelity. This isn't about my mental state. It's about damage control." Janet looked through everything carefully, then closed the folder. "I'm sorry, Derek. This must be very difficult." "It is. But I'm handling it through proper legal channels, not by making threats or harassing anyone. If my wife contacts you again, I'd appreciate it if you'd refer her to my attorney." "You're getting divorced? That seems inevitable at this point." I left Janet's office feeling oddly satisfied. Lexi had overplayed her hand, trying to destroy my reputation before I could damage hers. But she'd underestimated both my preparation and my credibility with people who actually knew me. Her next mistake came that afternoon. I was having lunch at a deli near my office when Simone appeared at my table, looking agitated. "We need to talk," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Do we?" "Lexi is falling apart. She hasn't slept in 3 days. She's barely eating. She can't concentrate at work." "That sounds like a personal problem." "Derek, you're destroying her." I set down my sandwich and looked at her directly. "I'm not doing anything to her. She destroyed herself when she decided to cheat on her husband. She made a mistake. She made a choice, multiple choices, over multiple months, and now she's living with the consequences." Simone leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What do you want? Money? An apology? What will it take to make this stop? I want her to understand what she threw away." I want her boyfriend to understand what kind of person he's really involved with. And I want everyone who enabled this affair to face the truth about their actions. Including me, especially you. She sat back like I'd slapped her. I was just being a friend. You were being an accomplice. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number again, but I recognized the tone. This has gone far enough. Meet me tonight or I go to the police. Ethan Brand, trying to sound threatening. I showed the message to Simone. Your boyfriend's boss wants to meet. Should I be scared? She read the text, her face growing pale. Derek, please, just talk to him. Maybe you two can work something out. There's nothing to work out. He's sleeping with my wife. I want him to stop. And if he doesn't? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then he'll learn what happens to people who take things that don't belong to them. I left Simone sitting at the table and walked back to my office. The afternoon dragged by slowly, punctuated by increasingly desperate text messages from both Lexi and Ethan. They were panicking, making threats they couldn't back up, trying to regain control of a situation that had already slipped away from them. At 6 o'clock, I drove to the Prudential Tower. Ethan's office was exactly what I'd expected. Glass and steel and expensive furniture, designed to impress clients and intimidate competitors. He was waiting behind a massive desk, trying to project authority in his tailored suit and designer watch. Derek Malone, he said, not getting up. Finally. Ethan Brand, I replied, taking the seat across from him. Thanks for the invitation. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? I want you to stop sleeping with my wife. And if I don't, I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo from the previous night. Him and Lexi holding hands at the restaurant. Then I send this to your wife, along with about 50 others just like it. His confident expression flickered. You're bluffing. Am I? I scrolled to another photo, this one showing them entering his condo building. Patricia Brand, corporate lawyer, lives at 247 Beacon Street in Brookline. Should I continue? Now he looked genuinely worried. What do you want? I told you, end the affair, stop seeing my wife, disappear from our lives. And if I do that, you'll keep quiet? I'll consider it. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. You know, I can make your life very difficult. I have connections, resources. You have a reputation, I interrupted. A business built on other people's money and trust. How long do you think that lasts when word gets out that you're a serial adulterer who targets married women? The threat hung between us like a loaded weapon. Ethan was used to intimidating people with his wealth and connections, but he'd never dealt with someone who had nothing left to lose. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. I stood up and walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing, Ethan. My wife thinks you're going to leave your wife for her. You might want to clarify that situation before she gets any more attached. I left him sitting behind his expensive desk, staring at his phone and probably wondering how much damage I could really do. The answer, as he was about to discover, was considerable. The call came at 2 a.m. on Thursday. I was lying in my hotel bed, reading through legal documents my attorney had prepared, when my phone rang. Derek? Lexi's voice was barely a whisper. I need help. Wrong number. Please don't hang up. Something terrible has happened. I sat up, suddenly alert. What kind of terrible? Ethan's wife found out about us. She's threatening to ruin both our careers, go to the press, destroy everything we've worked for. The irony was breathtaking. How did she find out? Someone sent her photos, pictures of us together, receipts, hotel records. She knows everything. I almost smiled. Patricia Brand had received an anonymous package the previous evening, everything I'd gathered about her husband's affair, delivered by messenger to her law office. The timing had been perfect. That's unfortunate, I said. Derek, I know you're angry with me, but please, she's demanding money, threatening to expose everything if we don't pay her. Sounds like extortion. You should call the police. I can't. If this gets out, I'll lose my job, my reputation, everything I've built. You should have thought about that before you started the affair. Please. She was crying now, genuine tears of panic and desperation. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices, but I need your help. What exactly do you want me to do? Talk to her. Convince her to keep quiet. You're good with people, good at solving problems. I'm good at solving logistics problems. This is a marriage problem, which you created. Derek, please, I'll do anything. Sign divorce papers. Give you whatever you want. Just help me get through this. I let the silence stretch out, listening to her breathe on the other end of the line. Where's Ethan in all this? He's not handling it well. He's talking about leaving town, abandoning his business, starting over somewhere else. Abandoning you, in other words. Another long pause. Yes. So when things got difficult, your boyfriend decided to run away and leave you to deal with the consequences alone. Derek, that tells you something about his character, doesn't it? She was sobbing now, the kind of broken crying that comes from realizing how completely you've misjudged a situation. I made such a terrible mistake, she whispered. Yes, you did. Multiple mistakes, actually. Can you ever forgive me? The question I'd been waiting for. The moment when she finally understood what she'd lost. Lexi, do you remember what I told you that first night, when I found your text messages? You said your line was closed to me. That's right, and I meant it. I hung up and turned off my phone. Friday morning, I met with my attorney to finalize the divorce papers. The settlement was straightforward. I wanted nothing from Lexi except my freedom. She could keep the apartment, the furniture, the lifestyle she'd built. I just wanted out. Are you sure about this? My lawyer asked. You're entitled to half of everything. I don't want half of a lie, I said. I want a clean break. That afternoon, I drove to Murphy's Tavern to meet Cal for what would probably be our last conversation about the whole mess. So it's over? He asked, sliding a beer across the bar. Almost. One more piece to put in place, which is, Patricia Brand is filing for divorce next week. She's also planning to expose Ethan's business practices to his investors and clients. Turns out he's been using company funds to finance his affairs. Cal whistled low. That's going to hurt. Lexi's boss found out about the affair yesterday. She's being transferred to the company's Cleveland office, effective immediately. Demotion disguised as a lateral move. And Ethan? Last I heard, he was liquidating his assets and planning to relocate to California. Starting fresh, he calls it. Running away. Same thing. We drank in comfortable silence for a while, watching the evening news on the bar's ancient television. Any regrets? Cal asked eventually. About the marriage? No. About how I handled the divorce? No. About the revenge? I considered the question carefully. I didn't get revenge, Cal. I just made sure the truth came out. Everything that happened to them was a consequence of their own choices. You sure about that? I'm sure that I never lied, never cheated, never broke any laws. I just stopped protecting them from the results of their actions. Cal nodded slowly. Fair enough. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. This isn't over. I showed it to Cal, who read it and shook his head. Ethan? Probably. Still trying to sound threatening. I typed back. Yes, it is. Have a nice life in California. Then I blocked the number and finished my beer. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and drove to a small apartment I'd rented in Cambridge. 1 bedroom, hardwood floors, a view of the river instead of the city skyline. It felt like home in a way the luxury apartment never had. I was unpacking boxes when someone knocked on the door. Through the peephole, I saw Lexi standing in the hallway, holding an envelope. I know you don't want to see me, she said when I opened the door, but I needed to give you this. The envelope contained signed divorce papers and a letter written in her careful handwriting. Derek, it began. I know I can never undo the hurt I caused, or take back the choices I made. I know I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid and thought I deserved more than I had. I know you'll probably never forgive me, and I don't blame you. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I lost. I understand that you were the only person who ever really loved me, and I threw that away for someone who didn't even care enough to stand by me when things got difficult. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover what I feel, but I'm sorry anyway. I hope you find someone who deserves the kind of man you are. I hope you find happiness. I hope someday you can think of me without anger. Love always, Lexi. I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. Thank you, I said. Derek, No, this is enough. The letter, the apology, the signed papers. This is how it ends. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked away. I closed the door and went back to unpacking my new life. 6 months later, I ran into Simone at a coffee shop in Harvard Square. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd learned hard lessons about loyalty and consequences. Derek, she said, seeming genuinely surprised to see me. Simone, how are you? I'm okay. Different job, different life. You? Better, much better. We stood there awkwardly for a moment, two people who'd been connected by someone else's drama. For what it's worth, she said finally. I think you handled everything with more class than I would have. I just wanted the truth to come out. It did. Sometimes that's enough. She was right. Sometimes the truth is enough. Sometimes justice doesn't require revenge, just patience and the willingness to let people face the consequences of their choices. I never saw Lexi again. I heard she eventually moved to Cleveland, started over, built a smaller but more honest life. I hoped that was true. Ethan Brand disappeared into whatever new identity he'd constructed in California. His business collapsed, his reputation was ruined, his marriage was over. The last I heard, he was working for someone else's company, just another middle manager with expensive tastes and a questionable past. As for me, I kept my job, found a better apartment, and eventually started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I'm in no hurry. I learned that it's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't value what you're offering. My line is still closed to Lexi. It always will be, but it's open to the possibility of something real, something honest, something worth protecting. That's enough for now. That's more than enough. Not from the stone this forge, not from this 20 stems.